My fiancée humiliated me for a cheap engagement ring her mother hated, so I returned it, walked away, and let them both drown in the luxury they worshipped. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and I thought I'd finally found the one when I met Julia. She walked into my life like something out of a dream smart, stunning and radiating a kind of effortless confidence I'd never seen before. We met at a charity fundraiser, of all places, and even though I was just there as a volunteer photographer, she spoke to me like I mattered. That was the first time someone from her world looked me in the eye instead of through me. Julia came from money, real money. Her mom, Veronica, was a luxury realtor who practically bathed in status symbols. The kind of woman who wore designer, heels to brunch, and used words like legacy when talking about handbags. Me. I'm a middle-class guy who put himself through school fixing computers and picking up warehouse shifts. We were from two different planets, but for a while, I actually believed love could bridge that gap. Julia used to say, "I don't care about all that. You're ambitious, kind, and grounded. That's what matters to me," and I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Even when her mother gave me the coldest handshake you can imagine, like she was trying not to touch something sticky, I brushed it off. Julia would squeeze my hand under the table or wink at me like we were a team. I guess I mistook her smile for rebellion. Thought she was choosing me over that world. That her love was some kind of defiance, but I didn't see it then, not really. How she'd flinch when I picked restaurants, how she'd hide price tags when we went shopping, how Veronica's voice seemed to echo louder than her own whenever money entered the conversation. And I had no idea the worst humiliation of my life was already quietly being planned. I spent nearly a year saving for that engagement ring. It wasn't anything flashing up by her family's standards anyway. But it was real. A vintage-style oval-cut diamond set in a delicate gold band. I chose it because it reminded me of something timeless, not trendy. Something that felt like us. I worked overtime, skipped nights out with friends, and even dipped into a small emergency fund just to make it happen. Every dollar felt like a promise. Every shift was another quiet way of saying I'm all in. When I finally had enough, I remember holding the ring in its tiny velvet box and just staring at it for hours. It wasn't huge, but it was elegant. I imagined Julia's face lighting up when she saw it, how her eyes would well up, how she'd throw her arms around me, how she'd say yes, like in every movie montage. That image carried me through every exhausting day. I proposed at the spot where we first met, the same garden courtyard outside the gallery. I lit candles. I even had soft music playing from a speaker tucked behind a bush. Now when I got down on one knee, she gasped and said, "Oh my God, yes." And it felt like my heart could finally exhale. For about 12 hours, I lived in that bubble. The next day, everything changed. Julia showed her mom the ring over brunch, texting her a picture while we were still lying in bed. I remember the way her smile faded as she stared at her phone screen, lips tightening. She didn't say much, just muttered, "She's being dramatic. Ignore her." But she didn't ignore her. The silence was just the start of something bigger, something colder. I didn't know it yet. But that ring, the one I poured myself into, was about to become the center of my humiliation. Later that week, Julia insisted we have dinner at her mother's place. She framed it as a celebration, but I could already feel the tension gathering in the air like a coming storm. Veronica greeted us at the door with her usual tight smile and air kisses that never quite landed. She looked at me like I was the waiter who'd overstayed his welcome. Halfway through appetizers, Julia casually flashed her hand across the table, showing off the ring. Veronica leaned in, squinted, then let out a low, "Oh." That single syllable carried more judgment than a courtroom. Then she said flatly, "It's sweet. Very quaint." She didn't even try to hide her distaste. I looked at Julia, expecting her to speak up, defend me, but she just laughed awkwardly and said, "We might upgrade later." This was more of a placeholder. My fork froze midair. Placeholder? I felt my face burn like I'd been slapped in front of a room full of people, even though it was just the three of us. Veronica sipped her wine and smirked. "You know, darling, a woman's ring says a lot about her man's ambition. But hey, sentimental value counts for something, right?" Every bite after that tasted like metal. I didn't say much the rest of the meal, just nodded and forced a smile when needed. On the drive home, Julia scrolled through Instagram like nothing happened. I asked her what that comment meant, and she shrugged. She's old school. Don't let it get to you. But it did. Because for the first time, I started to wonder if this engagement wasn't just about love anymore. It felt like a transaction, a contract I was already losing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Julia had just silently signed me over to her mother's expectations. A week later, Julia's parents hosted an engagement dinner at their country club. It was a sleek, sterile place with gold-plated name cards, candle centerpieces, and waiters in white gloves. Everything felt choreographed like a play I hadn't auditioned for. I wore my best suit, but still felt like an extra. Julia, on the other hand, looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. And so did her mother, who greeted me with a tight nod and a glance that skimmed right over me. It was halfway through the second-course steak tartare, and some kind of foam truffle nonsense when Veronica stood to give a toast. She clinked her glass with a spoon and smiled that signature fake smile. To Julia and, well, her choice, she began. The room chuckled. I blinked. Then came the bomb. May their love be richer than that little sentimental ring. The room exploded in laughter. I felt every head turn toward me. I froze, laughed awkward but not enough to stop it. I waited for her to say something, anything. Instead, she raised her glass. I stared at my plate, pretending to cut through meat I'd lost the appetite for. My ears burned. My chest tightened like someone had tied twine around it. I heard a guy at the next table mutter, "Damn, couldn't be me." Later that night, back at her place, I asked her why she didn't say anything. She sighed, irritated. "You're overreacting. It's just her humor." Everyone laughed. It wasn't that serious. But it was. It was meant to humiliate. And Julia let it happen. No defense, no pushback. It's just a clink of a champagne glass and a silent apology that never came. That night, for the first time, I didn't sleep beside her. Stared at the ceiling and wondered what kind of future I was signing up for. The shift didn't happen all at once. It came in subtle waves, little comments, offhand suggestions, quiet nudges that made my stomach tighten every time. A few days after the dinner, Julia brought up the ring again. We were sitting on the couch, some rom-com playing in the background, when she casually said, "Babe, have you thought about maybe trading the ring in and getting something more long-term?" I blinked. "What do you mean? I thought it was exactly your style." She hesitated, then said, "I love the sentiment, but you know how people talk. Everyone's expecting something more. Elegant. Mom even said she'd help if we wanted to upgrade." We wanted to upgrade. I swallowed hard. "You want me to return the ring I saved up for, just so your mom will stop gossiping?" Julia gave a soft shrug. "It's not just about her. It's about image. People are already talking, babe. They expect better." Asterisk, that word better hit like a slap. I tried to make sense of it. Was I not enough? Was my love only valuable if it came with a bigger stone and a shinier band? A few days later, she sent me links high in jewelry websites with 5-figure price tags. She even said, "Maybe your parents could help out, or we could finance it." Finance a ring. It wasn't about love anymore. It was about perception. And her mother was steering the ship. I started noticing more signs, her dismissing restaurant choices, suggesting we move closer to her parents, hinting at me leveling up my wardrobe. It wasn't just a ring. It was everything. And the woman who once claimed she loved me for my simplicity was slowly erasing every part of it. I felt myself fading into something transactional, something polished and presentable. And for the first time, I started wondering if Julia ever really saw me at all. It was a rainy Thursday when everything snapped into focus. Julia left her laptop open while getting ready for a spa day her mother gifted her. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. But a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. "Turn window closes in 3 days, Julment." Curious, I clicked it, and there it was, the exact receipt for the ring I'd bought. My name, the store, the SKU, the timestamp. She'd logged into my email and forwarded the return policy to herself the day after I proposed. My hands trembled on the trackpad. She had already been planning the swap. While I was still floating on cloud nine, dreaming of our future, she was researching store policies behind my back, just in case she could upgrade later. It wasn't about everyone else or making a good impression. It was never about anyone but her and her mother. I sat there, frozen, while thunder rolled in the distance and the rain smeared across the windows. The weight in my chest turned to something sharp. I felt betrayed, small, and stupid all at once. When she came back out, wrapped in her towel, hair damp and face glowing, she looked at me like nothing had changed. I asked her flat out, "Why did you forward the ring receipt to yourself?" She froze for just a second, then laughed. "God, are you spying on me now?" "It's not a big deal." "Kind of is," I replied, voice calm but cold. She rolled her eyes. "I just wanted to see the details in case I ever needed them." Relax. But I wasn't relaxing. I wasn't overthinking. I was waking up. The ring was never sacred to her. It was a placeholder. I was a placeholder. And in that moment, something inside me started to harden. I waited until she left for her brunch with Veronica. No note, no argument. Just quiet resolve and the ring box in my pocket. The jewelry store was across town. It's the same one where I'd spent nearly 2 hours nervously deciding between two styles. Walking back in felt surreal. The same clerk who had congratulated me weeks ago raised an eyebrow when I handed him the ring. He asked, "Is everything okay?" I just nodded and said, "Yeah, everything's finally clear." The refund hit my account immediately. It wasn't about the money, it never had been. It was about reclaiming something I didn't realize I'd lost until now. My self-respect. That ring represented more than a proposal. It held my effort, my hope, my belief in us, and she'd treated it like a prop. Back at the apartment, I packed a single duffel. A few clothes, essentials, my work laptop. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I just ... left. I scribbled a note and placed it on the kitchen island. I returned the ring, and I'm returning the illusion that this relationship was built on love. You didn't just disrespect a piece of jewelry. You disrespected me. Good luck with the upgrades. Then I shut the door. My phone buzzed nonstop for hours. Calls, texts, voicemails. Her tone shifted with each one. Confused, then angry, then pleading. I didn't answer a single one. I checked into a cheap hotel that night and stared at the ceiling, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. No pressure. No judgment. No sharp-edged smiles from her mother. No slow erasure of who I was. Just silence. And in that silence, I realized walking away wasn't weakness. It was the strongest thing I'd ever done. The story spread faster than I expected. A mutual friend texted me a screenshot from Julia's private Instagram. It was a black and white photo of her hand bare with a caption that read, "Not everything that sparkles is meant to last." Subtle, vague, but the comments were brutal. Some called her brave. Others called her out, but that wasn't the end of it. People started whispering. At first it was sympathy for her. Then the truth started leaking. One of her bridesmaids, someone I barely knew, messaged me directly, "I'm sorry. I saw how she and Veronica talked about the ring behind your back. It wasn't fair." Turns out Julia had been joking about the ring with her circle for weeks before I ever found out, describing it as quaint, starter level, and even a cute little token until the real one comes. It's the real one. I felt embarrassed all over again, but this time it didn't stick. Because for every person who mocked me before, 10 others were starting to see who she really was. Even guys from my side college friends, old coworkers started texting me things like, "Dude, you dodged a gold-plated bullet, and bro, she did you a favor." Veronica wasn't silent either. She spun her own narrative telling people. I was emotionally unstable and couldn't handle the pressure of high society, but that only made her look more petty, especially after she sent me a legal letter asking for the ring back. Thinking I'd kept it, I sent her a screenshot of the refund confirmation. No response. I stayed quiet publicly. No rants, no petty posts, just silence. But that silence? It was louder than anything I could have said, because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's Watching people ruin their own reputations while you rebuild your peace. I hadn't thought about her in weeks. When the next piece of gossip landed in my inbox, it came from Eric, one of the few guys from her world who never looked down on me. He sent a link in online gossip blog known for sniffing out scandals in upper-crust social circles. The headline read, "Real estate queen's daughter dumped by tech heir. Was it all for status?" Julia's name was right there, front and center. So was Veronica's. Turns out, after I walked away, Julia moved on fast. She started dating a guy named Mason, some second-generation trust fund kid whose family had investments in luxury hotels. Perfect on paper. Handsome, loaded, branded like a human Rolex. But that didn't last long, apparently. Mason found out about how she treated me. Through mutual friends. Screenshots. Voice notes. Even a leaked recording of her mocking my ring and saying, "Ugh, I had to pretend to love it." Poor thing tried so hard. Ended it publicly at a gala. People say he handed her a box during a speech and said, "Here's the upgrade you always wanted. Too bad it comes without a heart." Julia reportedly ran out in tears. Veronica tried to spin it as a personal attack on their family's character, but it was already out there. Screenshots made it onto Twitter. A meme account reposted her engagement photo next to a dollar store ring and captioned it, "She said yes for now." Her social image tanked. Influencer deals dried up. Mason's family blacklisted hers from several charity boards. And just like that, the world Julia and Veronica worshipped turned its back. She moved back in with her mother soon after. No more Sunday brunches. No more spa selfies. Just quiet disappearance. I didn't feel joy watching her fall. Not exactly, but there was something poetic about it. Watching the same pedestal they've built for themselves slowly crumble beneath their designer heels, while they sank into the luxury cage they'd built for themselves. I started building something real. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of the city, not fancy, but filled with sunlight and silence. No curated decor. No staged photos. Just space that felt like mine. I focused on work, threw myself into a new project I'd put off for months, a digital startup idea. I'd been sketching in my notebooks back when Julia used to tell me to be more realistic. Now, no one was holding me back. I traveled solo for the first time in years. Went hiking in the Pacific Northwest, ate street food in Portland, slept in hostels, breathed in foggy mornings with coffee in hand and no one to impress. I remembered who I was before I tried to impress someone who never really saw me. And then, I met someone. Not through an app. Not at a gala. Just at a small used bookstore tucked behind a cafe. Her name was Leah. She worked there part-time while finishing her degree. We talked about books, music, broken families, the weird joy of imperfect things. She laughed at my awful jokes and never once asked me what I drove or what I earned. On our third date, I told her everything. The ring, the mother, the humiliation. I waited for her face to twist into something judgmental instead. She leaned forward, touched my hand, and said, "You are never the problem." It was the first time in a long time I believed that we didn't rush things. There were no grand declarations. Just slow, honest conversations and nights filled with warmth, not luxury. And somewhere in the quiet comfort of it all, I realized something. I didn't need revenge. I just needed to remember who the hell I was. It had been nearly 7 months when Julia finally reached out again. An email this time, not a dramatic wall of text. Just a quiet subject line that said, "Closure." Almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. She asked to meet, said she'd been doing a lot of thinking, that she owed me a real apology. Against my better judgment, I agreed, but on my terms. A quiet cafe on the edge of town. No designer scenes, no audience. Just two people with unfinished business. She walked in looking smaller. Not physically, but emotionally. The designer clothes were still there, but they didn't shine like they used to. Her confidence had cracks now. "You look good," she said, trying to smile. "I feel good," I replied, keeping it neutral. There was a long pause before she finally said, "I messed up." She told me everything. How her mother pushed her. How she thought she was doing what was expected. That she never meant to humiliate me, just didn't know how to handle the pressure. Then she added, Maybe if you'd just tried harder to understand where I came from. I blinked. There it was. Even in her apology, I was still the problem. I stirred my coffee slowly, looked her in the eyes and said, "No. I understood exactly where you came from. I just refused to shrink to fit into it." She stared at me, speechless. I stood up, dropped a 20 on the table, and grabbed my coat. No anger. No dramatics. It's just peace. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Julia, but I already did." And I walked out this time, not looking back, not even once. Because closure doesn't always come with forgiveness. Sometimes it comes with finally being able to walk away without needing anything from the person who broke you. It's strange how quiet healing can be. There was no grand finale, no viral redemption arc. It's just long walks in the morning, black coffee that tasted like freedom, and nights filled with soft music instead of hard silence. I started sleeping better, stopped checking her socials, stopped replaying that dinner toast in my head. The anger softened, then dissolved. And in its place came something sturdier, clarity. Veronica and Julia, they never changed. I heard through the grapevine that Veronica launched some luxury consulting brand aimed at polishing women's public image. Ironically poetic, really. Julia started doing sponsored posts again, but nothing ever took off. The brands kept dropping her, apparently. Inauthenticity isn't great for engagement. I never spoke to either of them again. I did, however, keep moving forward. Leah and I took a trip to the mountains last fall. No Instagram stories, no fancy hotels. Just a rented cabin, mismatched mugs, and a fireplace we never quite figured out how to use properly. We laughed till our faces hurt. We talked about things that mattered. She never once asked about the price of anything. Only whether it made me feel like myself. And that's the difference. Really, Julia and her mother wanted someone who could look the part. Leah just wanted someone who was real. Sometimes I think back to that ring, the one I saved so hard for, the one they laughed at. And I realize now, it wasn't worthless. It was just wasted on someone who couldn't see value in anything that didn't glitter. So I let them drown in the very luxury they worshipped. Let them sip from crystal glasses filled with emptiness. Let them smile through shallow brunches and hollow compliments. Meanwhile, I've got something no money could ever buy: peace, dignity, and a life that feels mine. I didn't ruin them. I just stopped saving them, and that was more than enough.